This is the card we're making tonight. We're going to do some simple stamping in the background, and then we're going to stamp over top of it with an outline image. And the stamp sets that I'm using tonight are a touch of ink. I'm going to use the butterfly and the vine from this, just the outlines, not the fill-ins. This is a celebration set, and it's free with a $100 purchase during celebration. Celebration runs through the end of February. And I'm also using the sentiment best wishes out of this set. And the flower that I'm going to use for my background is from the In Bloom set. I'm loving this set. I love the dies. I won't be using dies from this set tonight, but I will be using this flower right here. It's a solid flower. So that's the In Bloom stamp set. I am also using a die from the Stitch So Sweetly die set. It comes as a bundle, the So Sentimental bundle. I'm using the second to the largest scalloped edge rectangle from this bundle, the So Sentimental. These are actually called the Stitch So Sweetly dies. All right, so that's that. And the color that I'm going to make in our demonstration tonight will be Highland Heather cardstock on Whisper White. One of the things that makes this work is when you have an ink that coordinates with the cardstock behind your stamped piece. And you want the ink to be light enough, and therefore, you know, the cardstock should be light enough so that this black ink that we stamp on top really shows up well. This was So Saffron that I used, So Saffron ink and So Saffron cardstock. And then this was Pool Party with a piece of Pool Party cardstock behind there. So you want to choose something that you know when you stamp, it's going to allow, when you stamp over top of it, it's going to let the black ink show nicely, have a nice contrast. I'm using Highland Heather cardstock, but I don't actually have, excuse me, I don't actually have Highland Heather ink. So what I'm going to use is Gorgeous Grape. But I'm going to stamp off a couple of times before I stamp on my white cardstock. That'll lighten it a little bit. So let's get dimensions out of the way here. I'm working on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and I chose to make my card base a tent fold because I think these look nice when you stand them up. I can't really show that on the camera, but I think they look cute when they stand up. So I cut it and folded it that way. The solid cardstock mat measures 4 by 5 1/4, and then the Whisper White that I'm going to stamp on measures 3 3/4 by 5. 3 3/4 by 5. And the sentiment piece, I guess I should mention that, you probably noticed on these two, I chose a cardstock that is in a complementary color that complements the color I used to stamp with. I didn't have all my lights on here. So for the So Saffron, a complementary color for yellow is purple, so I chose Highland Heather here for this sentiment. And a complementary color for a green is a reddish or a rose color, so that I used the Rococo Rose here. And so for my purple stamping, I'm going to use So Saffron, and I cut this strip to, let's see, I cut it to 3/4 by 2 1/4, give or take. All right, so I think that's all the dimensions. And I'm going to use my Stamparatus to stamp on, one, because I want to use the pad, and two, because I have the butterfly and the vine set up on here so that I can stamp them both at the same time. So, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp my flowers. And I have some scrap cardstock here so that I can stamp off on it, because remember, I can't use Gorgeous Grape full strength. It'll just be too dark. So I'm going to stamp off on my scrap stuff. And this is just called random stamping. So I'm going to pick up some ink and then I'm going to stamp off. And I found through experimenting that I really needed to stamp off 2 or 3 times to get a nice light image. 1, 2. So you only need to stamp off if you're using an ink that's too dark. I'm stamping off here because I'm using Gorgeous Grape, and it would have been too dark if I didn't stamp off. If you're using a lighter color ink, like say Pool Party, you may not need to stamp off. So just test your ink before you start stamping. And you want to stamp off your edges. You don't want to keep everything all just perfectly inside that cardstock. And a couple of times I'm going to stamp off again on here to make a lighter flower. You can probably see where I did that. And I think that's all I'm going to do. That squeaking is just me cleaning off my, I don't know if you can hear that, I'm just cleaning off my stamp on my Simply Chamois. Next I'm going to stamp my butterfly and my vine. And I'm going to stamp that with Basic Black. Well, Basic Black, it's Tuxedo Black. Memento Tuxedo Black. So I'm going to ink this up. Alright, I'm just going to stamp that image. Oops. There we go. And just for a little added interest, I'm going to use this texture stamp that comes in the A Touch of Ink, and it just adds little dots on there. Just a little bit of texture. I think it's cute. So just going to come across my vine with that. Just like that. Okay, so that's all the stamping that I need to do. So the next thing that happens with this card is we need to die cut the center. You see how this is cut out? The center is cut out of this image. So I will take my Stitch So Sweetly die, second from largest of the scallops, and I will center it on this stamped piece and maybe use a piece of washi tape to hold it down. And you want to make sure that you unstick your washi tape, even a sticky note. Make sure it's not too sticky. I actually, today even, I tore a piece of cardstock because when this goes through the Stamp and Cut and Emboss machine, it really gets compressed and it will stick very tightly to your cardstock. So I already have one cut from earlier. I stamped one and die cut it earlier, so here it is. See, this piece is cut out of the middle. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to adhere this frame to the solid cardstock, the 4 by 5 1/4 solid cardstock, and I'm just going to use Stamp and Seal to do this. Run it down sides here. And then just center this. Oop, sticking to it. There's nowhere to grab it without getting in the tape. Okay. So line it up. There we go. And then this piece, the piece that's cut out of the center, will be popped up on Stampin' Dimensionals. All right, so I don't know why, but I kind of like just putting these on in the window there instead of on the back of this. That just felt easier to me today when I was lining everything up. So that's what I'm going to do. There we go. Okay. And pull these off. I think I have more than enough on here. What do you think? I kind of go overboard sometimes with the Stampin' Dimensionals. There we go. Okay, and now this is a part that's, you want to kind of be right over your work and lining the die cut up with the window. And then I just set it down, just like that. Wonderful, love that. And then I will adhere this layered piece to my card base. And again, I'll use Stampin' Seal to do that. And so I'm just going to center this. There we go. And then my sentiment, I already have one stamped, and I stamped it on a, like I said, a complementary color to purple is yellow. And so for the sentiment, I'm going to put Stampin' Seal just on this end of it. And then on this end, I'm going to put a Stampin' Dimensional so that it rests evenly, because this part is up on dimensionals. And I'm just going to line it up with the edge of the white cardstock. So I'm going to put my Stampin' Seal just on the left side of this, where it touches the popped up piece. And then on the right side, I'm going to put a Stampin' Dimensional, and then just kind of place it where it looks good and line it up with the right edge of that white cardstock. There we go. And there's the card. You see, this is so simple but so pretty. Which one's your favorite one? Which one's the favorite color? I kind of like the yellow. What do you like the best? Super easy. Give it a try. This is really simple stamping at its best. Stamp some flowers, then stamp an outline image in black or a dark contrasting color. Put your sentiment on in a complementary color cardstock, and you have some pretty cards. Thanks so much for joining me today for this Stamping Over Stamping card project. I'm Kim Ray. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and you can find me at foggybonnet.com. See you again next time. Bye-bye.